bit different. Put it in reverse. Put the car in reverse and hold it there.
The climate continues to alarm us. The last 12 months have broken records like never before. Until we reach net zero global emissions, the climate will continue to warm, will continue to break records, and will continue to produce even more extreme weather events. Now heading into what forecasters say will be an extreme year, from punishing heat waves to severe weather and hurricanes, the nation's disaster relief agency is expected to run out of money before it's even over. The U.S. has been thrashed with 11 extreme weather disasters with costs exceeding $1 billion so far this year, with a total price tag of $25.1 billion, according to an updated tally from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That is worrying news for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, whose major disaster relief fund could slip into the red by the end of summer. A more than $1.3 billion shortfall in August, according to a May report. In a statement, a FEMA spokesperson didn't address exactly how much funding it would need to get through hurricane season, but said the agency is continuing to work with Congress to ensure sufficient funding is available. Without additional funding, FEMA will take steps prior to funding exhaustion to ensure resources are available to support ongoing life-saving and life-sustaining activities, the spokesperson said. In the event of a major catastrophe like a hurricane, the agency would have a funding reserve set aside for initial response and recovery operations.
Oh, somebody got hit!
This spring produced the second most tornadoes to date since records began in 1950, according to the Storm Prediction Center. Tornado activity skyrocketed from late April through May, with more than 780 confirmed tornadoes cutting across the central and eastern U.S. during April and May. The U.S. experienced several multi-state outbreaks in 2024. Tornadoes damaged homes from Texas to Minnesota and east to West Virginia and Georgia. They caused widespread destruction in several towns, including Greenfield, Iowa, Westmoreland, Kansas, and Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Barnsdall, Oklahoma, was hit twice in 2 months. Spring 2024 was unnerving for people across large parts of the U.S. as tornado warnings and sirens sent them scrambling for safety.
那里还会亮？对呀，这过雨，我靠！不是，那个好像是它电线被吹了，电线是电线。
More than 1,100 tornadoes were reported through May minus a preliminary number, but nearly twice the 30-year average at that point and behind only 2011, when deadly tornado outbreaks tore across the southeastern U.S. Persistent record heat waves were common over Mexico and Texas, while the Rockies and far northern United States stayed cool. The sharp temperature difference created a stronger jet stream than normal, leading to strong changes in wind speed with elevation. As a result, wind shear has been on steroids.
Tonight, 2 days after Hurricane Milton slammed Florida, dramatic high water rescues still underway.
Absolutely wild. I've never seen anything quite like this before. Look at how far this line goes.
Family of 8, including a child, from their flooded home. First responders have rescued more than 1,600 people across the storm zone. Nearly 40 twisters reported ahead of landfall.
Still without power, creating new headaches for Floridians returning home after Hurricane Milton.
This has the potential to be one of the worst disasters on record for West Central Florida.
Hurricane Milton is set to make landfall this Wednesday in the Tampa area, and folks, it is not looking good.
It has been an absolute wrecking ball.
Hurricane Milton exploded in strength today with winds topping 180 miles per hour.
Hurricane Milton will be known as one of the most destructive hurricanes to hit Florida in recent history. Less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida's northern Gulf Coast, Hurricane Milton made landfall near Siesta Key on October 9. The storm packed dangerous Category 3 winds of 120 miles per hour, knocking out power to millions of people in Florida and caused at least 24 deaths. Milton is the third hurricane to hit Florida this year. No other year on record has more than 3 hurricane strikes. After an early to mid-season pause, the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season is now above normal by all measures. Preliminary estimates of the total damage and economic loss from historic Hurricane Milton is between $160 billion and $180 billion. Milton will go down as one of the most damaging and impactful storms in Florida's history. Hurricane Helene's total damage and economic loss is estimated around $250 billion. Hurricane Milton flooded neighborhoods, flattened homes and knocked out power to millions of customers when it plowed through Florida. As Milton's rain and storm surge flooded neighborhoods late on October 9, 2024, 911 calls poured in. In Tampa's Hillsborough County, more than 500 people had to be rescued, including residents of an assisted living community and families trapped in a flooding home after a tree crashed through the roof at the height of the storm. Some places near the Gulf of Mexico, as well as farther inland, were inundated, though not to the degree that officials had feared. Many homes in the storm's path were leveled. By one early estimate, more than 120 were destroyed, while other structures nearby remained intact. At least 24 deaths have been linked to the storm. The damage varied from one county to the next. The Tampa Bay region did not experience the disastrous storm surge that many forecasters had feared. Still, there was serious flooding along the Gulf Coast, which received as much as 18 inches of rain. And some areas were battered by strong winds, particularly barrier islands in the direct path of the storm. Throughout the state, around 1,200 people were rescued, mostly from flooded homes and vehicles, by state emergency workers and the Florida National Guard, which activated more than 6,500 troops, one of the largest responses to a natural disaster in state history. It is not unusual for major hurricanes to spawn tornadoes, because their outer rain bands often contain thunderstorms that can generate strong winds. Tornadoes that accompany tropical systems are usually weak, but the ones that ripped across Florida on October 9 were more intense than usual, meteorologists said. They were strong and lasted for a long time, cutting winding paths through several counties. That is why more than 100 structures were damaged before Milton had even come ashore, with fatal results. Tornadoes killed 6 people in St. Lucie County, on the Atlantic coast about 65 miles north of Palm Beach. In St. Petersburg, winds gusting to more than 100 miles an hour tore part of the roof off Tropicana Field, the home stadium of the Tampa Bay Rays. Video posted on social media showed portions of the stadium's roof blowing in the wind. A spokesperson for Tropicana Field confirmed in a statement that no first responders were being staged at the Trop and the essential personnel that were there are all accounted for and safe.
We are looking inside Tropicana Field. We are seeing extreme damage to there was a report we saw online.
The cost of repairing the damage was around $23 million and was covered by insurance. There are indications of extensive damage elsewhere at the stadium. For example, some team offices on the 4th floor, which had drop ceilings under the overall roof, are now open to the elements. More than 18 inches of rain fell in St. Petersburg, marking a 1 in 1,000-year rainfall event. Milton's prolific rain caused major flooding and swelling rivers to historic highs in some places. FEMA Director Deanne Criswell said Florida dodged the worst-case scenario. At least 135 people from an assisted living facility were rescued. Nearly a dozen river gauges across the state were in major flood stage. The Hillsborough River had already surged to 15.46 feet, beating the previous record of 15.33 feet set in 1960. Many areas in Florida are also recovering from the aftermath of a Milton-spurred torrent, supercharged tornadoes, according to National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan. At least 9 tornadoes plowed through St. Petersburg, including 3 in less than 25 minutes. As Floridians survey the damage, more than 3 million people were without power. Florida's power outages were most significant along its west coast, especially in the Hardee and Highlands counties. With 2 major hurricanes in as many weeks, some Florida residents say they've had enough of dealing with hurricanes and issues associated with them. One survey found that nearly 12% of Florida residents say they plan to leave the state in the next year because of rising insurance costs. As Florida begins the long process of cleaning up and recovering from Hurricane Milton, the tornado outbreak has emerged as a leading cause of death and damage in a state that is accustomed to tropical storms, but less familiar with powerful twisters. South Florida saw one of the strongest tornadoes in its history. Overall this year, the U.S. has seen an abnormally high number of intense tornadoes linked to hurricanes. The swirling winds hit 140 miles per hour in Palm Beach Gardens, tearing away concrete walls and ripping off large sections of roof on newly built homes, according to a preliminary report from the National Weather Service. Early research indicates that tropical cyclones could produce more tornadoes in a warmer world. In a study published in June, researchers modeled Hurricanes Ivan, Katrina, Rita and Harvey in a warmer, future climate. Their results indicated that the number of potentially tornadic storms produced by tropical cyclones could increase between 56% to 299% by mid-century, assuming the pace of fossil fuel pollution remains steady. It's not yet known whether climate change played a role in this year's storm-related twisters. But Bill Gallus, an author of the June study and a professor of meteorology at Iowa State University, said that during Milton, it was really unusual how unstable conditions were in South Florida. One reason Milton produced so many tornadoes is that the hurricane's thunderstorms ventured far from its center. That outer storm band ended up isolated and without interference from other systems. Those were the thunderstorms that spawned tornadoes. It's a reminder that hurricanes can be a threat long before landfall and far from a storm's center. The other crucial ingredient for Milton's tornadoes, heat. The hurricane approached the Florida coast in the afternoon, and because the thunderstorms were way out at the hurricane's edge, they encountered especially warm conditions in addition to wind shear. Changes in the direction and speed of winds at altitude. In a hurricane with winds that rotate counterclockwise, like Milton, tornadoes tend to form on the front end of a storm and on its right side, which is sometimes called the dirty side. This area also tends to see the worst of the winds. More research is still needed on how, exactly, climate change can influence tornadoes produced by hurricanes. But global warming's influence on extreme rain is more solid and clear. A report released from the World Weather Attribution Project, a consortium of scientists that analyzes extreme weather and is considered an authority in determining climate change's influence on particular events, found that rainfall in one-day events like Milton is now about 20% to 30% more intense because of climate change. More than 2,100 gas stations in Florida had limited fuel, according to numbers from GasBuddy, which accounts for over 26% of all gas stations in the state. 1,000 federal personnel remain on the ground after Hurricane Milton, and search and rescue teams have conducted over 4,200 rescues and assists. Another 50,000 workers were restoring power. St. Petersburg reported that more than 100 traffic lights were down across the city and 30 water lines were broken, mainly because of fallen trees, as a result of Hurricane Milton. In one Tampa neighborhood, entire homes were nearly submerged underwater. In Clearwater, Florida, west of Tampa, hundreds of first responders were using high water vehicles and boats to rescue families trapped. In a recovery update, city officials said crews were still assessing the storm's damage and working to clear debris from the streets, including hundreds of fallen trees.